Venezuela has become the poster child for the failure of socialism. This mantra is repeated ad nauseum on the right as well as the left. While there's no defending the spiral of chaos that the Venezuelan Socialist Party has created, it's important to put things in perspective. We'll start with the indisputable truth that Maduro and the Socialists are notoriously corrupt and grossly incompetent. They ran large budget deficits every year, even as oil prices skyrocketed from 2005 to 2014, while refusing to diversify their economy. Both blunders destroyed Venezuela when commodity prices tanked, so again, there's no defending the Venezuelan government. Second, the U.S. has played an active role in undermining the socialists in Venezuela. President Nicolas Maduro said, "We detected activity and we have captured some U.S. citizens in undercover activities, in hidden activities, in espionage to win over towns and peoples along the Venezuelan coast. We captured a pilot of a U.S. plane of Latin origin with all kind of documentation on him, and announced the arrest of an unspecified number of Americans on charges of espionage." While the Obama administration did deny U.S. support for a coup, it did issue a statement saying the U.S. intends to steer the Venezuelan government in the direction they should be headed. After the U.S. was caught, they didn't need a pretext and just openly called for sanctions, which caused Venezuela to rely on the rise of commodity prices, which of course are temporary. The U.S. continued to allow them to export oil, soy, and grain to China in return for Chinese manufactured goods, thus undermining Venezuela's ability to develop a sustainable economy with manufacturing and agriculture. Now with the sanctions, the U.S. has, very deliberately, cut off their only means of economic growth. It's true that the critical oil sector, which the U.S. seeks to destroy, is dominated by a state-owned company, but other important industries like food imports and processing operations, pharmaceuticals, and auto parts are still controlled by the private sector. In fact, despite capitalist propaganda, over 2/3 of the Venezuelan economy is privately run. Plus, the U.S.-backed capitalism that plagued Venezuela in the 90s is still so unpopular that Enrique Capriles, the U.S.-supported right-wing leader of the opposition, calls himself a socialist. Third, if Venezuela is proof of the failure of socialism, then Nigeria is proof of the failure of capitalism. One is capitalist, the other is socialist, but both are oil-rich countries that are deeply impoverished. Nigeria is Africa's most popular country and top oil exporter, but suffers from some of the worst poverty in the world. It is a capitalist U.S. client state whose government works in the interest of multinational corporations like Chevron and Shell. Despite some of the world's biggest oil, gas, and mineral reserves, over 60% of Nigerians live in absolute poverty. There is a high illiteracy rate, and 1 in every 3 Nigerian children is forced into labor. There are oil spills and oil fires almost every day. Children play on black beaches and the average life expectancy is only 53. Nigeria is the top recipient of aid on the African continent. U.S. military advisors, along with Shell and Chevron, work with the Nigerian government. Those who challenge the capitalist system and call for the wealth to go to private citizens of the Niger Delta are not only brutalized by the corrupt police and military, but also by Shell's private army. So why do we support Nigeria and not Venezuela? There are 3 reasons Venezuela gets negative press. First, it successfully defied the US. Second, to discredit socialism. And third, because Venezuela competes with the US for global oil markets. The fourth and final point is to be made by recognizing the success of Venezuela's socialist neighbor, Bolivia. Bolivia has been run by socialists since 2006, whose planned economy is thriving. Export revenue grew 6-fold in the decade after Evo Morales, the charismatic hard-left president, took power, from $2.2 billion just before his election to $12.9 billion at the peak of the boom. The difference? Venezuela's socialists spent their entire export windfall and then some. Bolivia's socialists saved much of theirs. While Bolivia is by no means perfect and suffers from plenty of government corruption, the middle class and the economy are thriving, and suggests the difference between Bolivia and Venezuela has nothing to do with abstract ideological labels and everything to do with fiscal prudence. I am in no way disputing that Venezuela is a socialist country and that its policies are abject failures. What I am saying is that the failure of Venezuela in no way condemns the socialist system as a whole, and if you believe it does, then you have to believe that Nigeria is proof capitalism doesn't work. The socialist system has worked many times throughout history, unlike free market capitalism, which has never worked and will be the topic of the next video. Thanks for watching.